The thing with Mahomes, not only does Mahomes not have the stats now, he's not going to have them.
Yep.
It's not going to happen. His top receivers right now, like, they're not trading for Devontae Adams. Like, maybe they get Amari Cooper. I don't even know if that's happening. Like, it's Xavier Worthy, who can only run go routes, and he's good at them. That's all he can do right now, at least. Justin Watson, Juju Smith-Schuster, Travis Kelce is going to have to be the number one in this offense again. Like, they're going to have to turn back the clock big time here. Can they do it? Like, I'm not so sure. Mahomes he's not going to have the stats. It's not going to happen. They could still win 14 or 15 games, and we can talk about, like, how the Chiefs are rewarded if that happens. I don't know if Mahomes would win MVP. Maybe you want to say Reed could win Coach of the Year. Maybe Chris Jones wins Defensive Player of the Year. But, like, Mahomes is not going to have the stats. Not with the way things are currently constituted with this Kansas City offense. Sam Darnold is now one of the favorites to win NFL Most Valuable Player. You want to talk about bizarro world? You want to feel like life is a simulation? Like we're in the Matrix? Sam Darnold winning NFL MVP in the year of our Lord 2024, like, might convince me that like Agent Smith and Neo and Morpheus are out there somewhere. Femi joins me here. Femi has done all the work on NFL awards, so you, our listener and viewer, so you don't have to. We've gone through all of them, all the markets. We'll hit all of them over the course of the next 60 minutes here on the show. We absolutely love it here on Wednesdays on You Better You Bet. And Femi, let's start with Most Valuable Player. And you can tell me what's the most interesting to you here. We should talk about Darnold. Patrick Mahomes is the favorite at plus 240. I don't know if that's right. Josh Allen plus 275. Then the sports books, hashtag the books, have drawn a line. Lamar Jackson is next, the defending MVP at 10-1. CJ Stroud and Sam Darnold, both at 11. Brock Purdy, 15. Jared Goff, 25. The following players all at 30. Joe Burrow, Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, and Jaden Daniels, Jordan Love of the Green Bay Packers at 50-1. How do you, my friend, handicap NFL Most Valuable Player as it stands now through 4 weeks?
Yeah, I actually think this is the most interesting awards market that we have going in the NFL because you mentioned it, Patrick Mahomes plus 240 as the MVP. Now, in most years, you see Mahomes favorite the MVP, you just move on to OPOY, DPOY, the other awards and say, you know what? Mahomes is the favorite. He's the best player in the league. He should be the favorite. But based on how Kansas City is playing this season and all the injuries they have on offense, Mahomes is not putting up MVP caliber stats. Now, he checks the winning box because that's the most important box with MVP. Can you win games? Can you be the 1 seed? They're 4-0. They're in line to be the 1 seed. They're the favorite over at BetMGM to be the 1 seed. So, boom, he checks that box. But the statistics, that's where it's shaky because Mahomes right now, 17th in the league in QBR, like not in the top 10 in terms of like the EPA per play. Like he's just not having your typical Patrick Mahomes type season. And I'm not so sure that he's going to have that season at any point this year because Hollywood Brown is out. Rashee Rice is out. Pacheco is out. He's coming back, but probably not till December. This is just going to be a shaky offense for the Kansas City Chiefs. And they're probably going to win with defense. It's going to be similar to what we saw this past Sunday when they beat the Los Angeles Chargers in a 17-10 game. Like that doesn't speak to being MVP. And in fact, Mahomes also 5 interceptions on the season through 4 games. Like that's not typically what we see from Mahomes. So he's the best player in the playoffs. I'd love to bet on him. But right now for regular season MVP, I think he actually is kind of like the flawed favorite at the top of the board just because he's the default guy. Josh Allen just got blown out, and there's nobody else that right now that the books feel comfortable with putting as the favorite for MVP. So we can get into some of the interesting names right now, but I just wanted to set the table. Mahomes being the favorite is what makes this interesting just because he's not having anywhere close to what is an MVP season. We came back with Sam Darnold on the rejoin, down to 11-1. And Darnold actually checks both boxes right now through 4 games. But there's one box that's kind of like the mystery box that I'm not so sure that he checks. So winning, Vikings 4-0, 1 seed in the NFC, they have a chance to do that, of course. Statistics, Darnold leads the league in passing touchdowns. He's up there top 5 in QBR. EPA per play, he's up there in the top 5. Like that checks another box. But the mystery box is the biggest one that I'm not so sure to where like, the science in my brain says Darnold would make sense, but when you think about awards and the art form of it, I'm not so sure Darnold gets there because his name is also Sam Darnold. And I think back to like last year when we had this conversation, and we'll have it again with Brock Purdy. will the voters at the end of the year feel comfortable writing Sam Darnold down at the top of their ballots? Because we've all seen Sam Darnold play, whether it was with the Jets or it was with the Panthers. He was a backup in the Niners. Like, he's had a bad career up until this point, a disappointing career for someone who was drafted third overall. And now he's had the success. It's an easy, like, common denominator with that's where they can point to and say, oh, Darnold's having a lot of success because of his head coach, Kevin O'Connell. Like, I don't know if Darnold's going to get the full brunt of the credit for having a big time season because it's failed miserably in his last spots. And people will say, oh, what changed? Well, he went to a different coach and now helps with these players. That's why he's playing well. It's not because he's an MVP. It's because he's in an MVP situation. So that's where at 11-1, I would not bet on Sam Darnold at this price because I think there's going to be a bias against him given the history of his career. Now, if he's 100-1, go crazy, bet him because he checks the statistics and he checks the winning. But at 11-1, when it's getting down to do you think he can actually win right now, I would not bet Sam Darnold to win the award. And we can talk about a couple of other guys that kind of fit into that mold as well. But Darnold, I think that's the big mover this week because the Vikings won another game as an underdog that people are kind of talking about. He's also talking about him as a comeback player of the year. We'll get to that at some point in this show. But like MVP, that move, I don't think that's a smart move just because as it stands right now, and I could be wrong, maybe all the voters line up and say we want to bet or vote for Sam Darnold. But right now, I'm not really, that doesn't pass the sniff test for me. I don't think they would actually vote for Darnold. They'd find somebody else that they could vote for to win MVP because of the past in his career. I think we should definitely talk about the marquee matchup that we do have in this market, that being Texans hosting the Buffalo Bills, because my guess is that Mahomes is not going to be the favorite when we have this conversation next week. If Bills win, it's going to be right back to Josh Allen. Here we go again. Allen, the MVP favorite. But if the Texans win, what happens then if Houston wins that game? Because it's a coin flip game in the market, 1-point dog at home. They could easily win the game. It's like their 49.8% chance to win it. I think that the price of CJ Stroud, he's 13-1, 12-1 in that range. It's interesting because statistically, he doesn't really make a lot of sense either. Kind of like Mahomes hasn't gotten off to the best start of his season so far. But I think that if they do win, that really does launch his MVP candidacy, having beaten Josh Allen, who everyone thinks sort of in their heads, at least right now through 4 games, is the MVP. So I'm not betting Stroud because I actually like Buffalo in the game. But if you do like Houston in the game, kind of similar to the Heisman conversation that we had last week, if you like Alabama, bet Milroe. If you like Houston, I think you bet CJ Stroud because that 13-1, that 12-1 is probably going to be plus 550 when you wake up Monday morning for CJ Stroud to win the MVP.
All right, good stuff there with the Bills and the Houston Texans. I want to hit you with one more name here. And like we're spending a lot of time on MVP, but Femi tells you it's the most interesting market right now. So you talked about Sam Darnold, right? And you compared him to Brock Purdy last year. And people will remember because we did it a ton on the show. And it was the biggest award story last year at the end of the year, heading into the Christmas night game with Baltimore and San Francisco, where it feels like winner of this game wins MVP. The quarterback wins MVP. Either Brock Purdy for the Niners or Lamar Jackson for the Ravens. Ravens obviously win, yada, yada, yada. Lamar Jackson wins his second MVP award. And the overwhelming consensus going into that game, even if the Niners had won, like maybe Purdy would have won MVP, no one seemed especially excited to write Brock Purdy's name down to win Most Valuable Player.
Nope.
Niners go to the Super Bowl, stand toe-to-toe with Mahomes. Purdy plays well in the game. They lose in overtime on a walk-off touchdown from the great Patrick Mahomes. And the Niners are 2-2 right now, but like let's be objective here. Brock Purdy's playing better right now than he did last year when he led the Niners to the Super Bowl. He has been unbelievable. He's got great stats. He's throwing the ball down the field an absolute ton. What about Brock Purdy right now at 15-1? The Niners a touchdown favorite on Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals in a game with a very high total.
Yeah, from a stat standpoint, Purdy, you mentioned it. He's been really efficient, leads the league in yards passed, and also like yards per attempt. Purdy's up there like at 9-point-something yards, like which is ridiculous. Everyone's talking about how everyone's throwing checkdowns these days. Like Purdy's not doing that. He's throwing the ball down the field and doing it accurately and efficiently. And he's third in the league in EPA per play, which is like a stat that like I'm not the biggest fan of. I think it's a little bit, whatever. But like people, it tends to dictate who wins the award. So it's one that you probably have to be like just knowing and be aware of is like EPA per play and knowing where guys kind of stack up in that one. And Purdy right now is behind Jaden Daniels and Josh Allen in that statistic. So I think he passes the stat test. He passes the win test just because we all feel the 49ers are going to eventually get this thing rolling along when they get their guys back. Who knows if McCaffrey comes back or whatever, but they at least have Debo and Kittle back, and then he can get there. I just my thing with Purdy is that, like, while he's built up enough kind of cachet in the eyes of the voters, or at least he's built up more, I don't know if they really still want to vote for him, because there's still people out there that'll be like, oh, well, it's Kyle Shanahan and it's offense. It's Ayuk and Debo and Kittle. Like, McCaffrey's not there anymore, so they don't have that excuse. But it's still, there's like that bias of he was Mr. Irrelevant. He's sort of kind of doing this just because of his surrounding parts. Like, there are people who will never get over the fact that Purdy's just a really, really good quarterback.
I kind of disagree with that. I think I disagree with that this year now. I think the worm, I don't know if everyone's turned. I think the worm is starting to turn a little bit with Brock Purdy. That's just my feeling. I don't know if I'm ready to bet on it. Not at this price, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if the Niners can win enough games, but I do think perception is turning on Brock Purdy now in a positive way for him. I do think that.
Yeah, which, I mean, there's still a lot of runway. So, like, if he continues to play this well, maybe by the end in December, everyone's like, you know what? Brock Purdy was the best quarterback in the NFL this season. He deserves to win MVP. Probably should have won it last year. Because, like, honestly, looking at his stats, even with the clunker against the Ravens, he probably should have been the MVP. Like, he was that good last year, but it was Purdy, and it was such a loud, bad performance in primetime that everyone pivoted to Lamar Jackson. But I just, at 15-1, I would not bet it, just because I don't know. Like, I talk about main character energy with this award, because, like, you have to be the main character. Lamar Jackson, when you think of the Ravens, you think of Lamar. When you think of the Bills, you think of Josh Allen. When you think of the Texans, you think of CJ Stroud. When you think of the 49ers, some people think of Purdy. Some people think of Kyle Shanahan. Some people think of Brandon Ayuk and Debo Samuel and the weapons. Like, there's a lot going on there to where he doesn't really have, like, the main character type energy that a lot of MVPs typically win. I know that sounds subjective, but when the margins are this thin, you kind of have to use a little bit of art as well as the science as well to kind of handicap this thing. So at current price, he's interesting because he's going to have a really great stats and they're going to win a lot of games, but I just don't know if he's the main character when people think of the San Francisco 49ers.